Hey guys, today I'm going to give you 10 tips for beginner photographers in 2023 to help you to improve your skills and capture better and more beautiful photos. Now, the very first tip that I have for you guys is understanding your camera. Now, you really want to make sure you take the time to learn the basics of your camera, whether you're starting out with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. You definitely want to take the time to understand the settings, how to access everything in your camera's menus. You want to be able to understand how to control things like aperture, shutter speed, ISO, white balance, things like that, so that when you're photographing, you can access those things on the fly without complicating things or slowing things down. The next tip I have for you is to understand how to use available light. Now, mastering natural light is something that is absolutely crucial when it comes down to photography, and you'll want to experiment with different times of the day, such as golden hour or blue hour. Golden hour, by the way, is just after sunrise or before sunset, and that's going to actually help you get soft, flattering, beautiful light. And being able to experiment with those different lighting scenarios is going to really help you to understand and experiment with different photos. The next tip I have for you is to steady your shots, and you'll want to invest into a tripod, or if you don't have the money just yet, you might want to use some stable surfaces. It could be a ledge, it could be something around you in your environment when you're taking pictures. Obviously, you want to be safe, but you want to use those to eliminate what we call camera shake. Now, when you get camera shake, that can basically introduce a little bit of camera blur potentially in your photos. In some situations, if you don't use a tripod, your images are just not going to be very sharp. It's not something you have to use all the time, but you need to learn the types of situations and scenarios where you're going to have to actually use one. Now, the next thing is to understand that composition really matters. You want to really learn as much as you can about composition. You want to learn about the rule of thirds and leading lines and framing and things like that. And the important thing to know is that these techniques can really transform an ordinary photo into something that is a visually pleasing, beautiful photograph that you could be really proud of, and that if you have clients, they can also be extremely happy about. Now, this next tip is something that I feel like beginner photographers often miss, and it's something that they catch later after they've already taken the photograph and gone back home. And that's really to simplify your subjects. What I mean by that is to try to keep your compositions nice and clean and uncluttered, and that way you can get a nice, beautiful photograph. One of the things that often happens is, you take a nice photo, it could be, let's say, a portrait, and then when you get home and you took a look at your photo, you notice there's some clutter in the background or something weird in the background that you're gonna have to go and try to remove in post. Sometimes that works well and sometimes it does not. And so that's something that you want to be really mindful of, especially when you're placing your subjects or when you decide to take a photograph. Take a look at the entire scene before you actually take the picture. That way you can adjust for anything like that. The next tip I have for you is to experiment with depth of field. Now, you can play around with your aperture settings to control the depth of field, and wide apertures or low f-stop numbers can actually create a nice shallow depth of field that can give you some beautiful bokeh in the background. And those are really ideal for portraits, and narrow apertures or high f-stop numbers really provide a lot more focus throughout the entire frame from front to back. And depending on the actual images that you're capturing, one or the other is going to be something that you might want to use. One other thing that you want to keep in mind as a beginner photographer is that you want to actually shoot in RAW. You don't want to shoot in JPEG. The reason why you want to shoot in RAW instead of JPEG is that RAW files are just more dense files. They have more data and they offer a lot greater flexibility when it comes down to post-processing. Now, speaking of post-processing, you definitely want to learn post-processing as well. I think that, you should really invest some time in learning the basics when it comes down to photo editing. This can be something that can be a little bit scary for some photographers that are new, but you want to utilize softwares like Adobe Lightroom, or you can maybe find some free options online if you want to, but I really highly recommend Adobe Lightroom. But you want to play around with Adobe, and you want to learn sort of the basics and learning how to, straighten photos, crop them, and then also playing around with color, and just really finding your style, because this in the long term is going to be something that's going to set you apart from other photographers and make your photo stand out a lot more, to the point where if someone sees an image, they will automatically know that it's you that actually took the photo. One of the other things that can be challenging when you're starting out with photography is actually finding your niche. And I think that you should experiment with different types of photography. So there are so many different types of photography out there. There's landscape, there's portraits, there's macro, there's street photography. There's so many different types of photography. And I think you should just identify what you enjoy the most and just focus on that area to develop your skills further. The next step I have for you is to really just practice as much as possible. Photography is an art form, and improving upon it really comes with practice, and a lot of practice. You should take your camera everywhere you go, capture something every day, capture your everyday scenes, analyze your shots, identify areas for improvement, and just build upon that day after day. I want you guys to enjoy the process of learning and experimenting, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, as mistakes are an essential part of growth in photography. Before I go, I do want to hear from you guys. What were some things that you wish that you knew as a beginner photographer, or maybe some tips that you wish you had starting out as a photographer? Leave those in the comments below and let's chat about it. Also, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, and if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button for more videos just like this. I make videos every single week. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.